Welcome back, guys, to Wrong Turn Horror. In today's episode, I'm sharing 10 terrifying real encounters with Michigan legends. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new horror story. Now, dim the lights, lock your doors, and let's step into the chilling woods, haunted towns, and cursed waters of Michigan. The first legend takes us deep into the shadowy woods of Wexford County, Michigan, where locals whisper about a beast that walks on two legs but isn't human. It is known as the Michigan Dogman, and if you ask the right old-timers, they'll tell you it's been haunting the forest since long before settlers arrived. They say its howl is unlike anything else in nature, a deep, guttural cry that begins like a wolf's but carries an edge of something disturbingly human, as if the sound itself is torn between two worlds. The earliest written report dates back to 1887, when two lumberjacks claimed to have seen a creature near a river bend. It stood upright like a man, but its body was covered in fur, and when it turned toward them, its head was that of a dog or wolf, snarling with rows of sharp teeth. The men fled, swearing they had never seen anything like it before, and by morning, their story had spread through the logging camps, planting the seed of fear that still grows in Michigan's forests to this day. Over the decades, stories of the Dogman have surfaced again and again, always in the same kind of places: back roads, logging camps, abandoned trails where few people venture after dark. Witnesses describe it as nearly 7 feet tall, with glowing amber eyes that shine in the dark and long, muscular arms that hang almost to its knees. Some say it runs on 2 legs like a man. Others claim it drops to all 4s when it chases, but every account carries the same terrifying detail. It does not behave like an ordinary animal. It seems to stalk deliberately, to watch, and to choose when to reveal itself. One of the most chilling encounters happened in the summer of 1938. A farmer named James Taylor was returning home late one night after checking his traps near the Misty River. The moonlight was bright enough to see by, and as he approached a clearing, he noticed something standing among the trees. At first, he thought it was another man, tall, broad-shouldered, but when it stepped into the light, James froze. Its head was that of a wolf, long muzzle dripping, ears pointed, eyes reflecting the pale glow of the moon. It bared its teeth in a silent snarl, and James swore his blood went cold. The creature didn't attack, didn't even move closer. It simply stared at him, unmoving, until James stumbled backward and ran. He later told neighbors that what frightened him most was not its appearance, but the sense that it was intelligent, that it had chosen to let him go. Decades later, in 1961, a group of friends camping in the woods near Big Rapids reported hearing heavy footsteps circling their tents at night. They assumed it was a bear, but when they looked outside with a flashlight, they saw something towering in the tree-line. The light caught its eyes first, glowing like coals, then the fur along its chest and arms. When the beam reached its face, the friends screamed. The creature had the unmistakable features of a dog, its lips curled back in a growl, saliva dripping from its jaws. Before they could react, it bolted into the trees with impossible speed, crashing through brush like it weighed hundreds of pounds. The campers packed up at dawn and never returned, but one of them kept a journal describing the encounter in detail. That journal still circulates online, passed around as evidence that something truly unnatural stalks the forests of Michigan. Even in modern times, the Dogman hasn't gone quiet. In 1987, a DJ named Steve Cook released a novelty song called The Legend on the radio, telling the tale of the Dogman. He thought it was just a fun story to spook listeners, but the aftermath was far from a joke. Within days, hundreds of people from across Michigan began calling in, claiming they had seen something similar themselves. The flood of stories shocked even Cook, who admitted he had made up the song without knowing the full history of the legend. Suddenly, the Dogman was back in the public's imagination, and sightings surged again. One chilling call came from a man who said that, in the 1960s, he had been hunting near Luther when he spotted what he thought was a bear. But when it stood up, it wasn't a bear at all. It was tall, muscular, with a wolf's head and glowing eyes. The hunter aimed his rifle, but when the beast let out a low, human-like growl. He dropped the gun and fled. Another caller described being followed while driving a lonely dirt road at night. The creature kept pace with his truck, sprinting on two legs, until he reached the main highway, where it vanished into the dark. Many skeptics argue that the Dogman is nothing more than mistaken identity, a bear standing upright, a wolf seen in poor light. But there are details that don't fit so neatly. Bears don't chase cars on two legs. Wolves don't watch you from the tree-line, standing upright like a man. And over, witnesses mention the same unnatural eyes, glowing even without light to reflect them. There's also the matter of the strange howls recorded in the woods. In 1997, a farmer in the Traverse City area captured a chilling sound late one night while checking his property. The tape revealed a howl unlike any known animal, deep, guttural, rising into a sharp cry before fading. Experts who analyzed it could not identify the source. To this day, that recording is passed around as evidence of the Dogman's voice. But perhaps the most disturbing part of the legend is not the sightings themselves. It's the feeling people describe afterward. Survivors often talk about a sense of being watched long before they saw the creature, as though something had been stalking them quietly, waiting for the right moment to show itself. Others describe dreams afterward, nightmares of glowing eyes in the woods, of scratching at windows, of heavy breathing outside their doors. Skeptics dismiss it all as folklore. But in Wexford County, people know better. Ask the hunters who refuse to go into certain areas after dark. Ask the drivers who avoid back roads on moonless nights. Ask the families who swear they've heard scratching on their barns at night, only to find deep claw marks in the morning. They'll tell you the Dogman isn't just a story. It's real, and it still prowls the woods. And if you ever find yourself hiking alone in northern Michigan, remember this. If you hear a low growl just beyond the tree line, if you catch the flash of amber eyes in the dark, don't stop to look closer. Because those who've seen the Dogman up close often say the same thing. They wish they never had. Now let me take you to the city of Detroit, where under the glow of flickering streetlights and the hum of industry lies a legend that has haunted the city for centuries. They call it the Nain Rouge, the Red Dwarf, and wherever it walks, disaster is never far behind. To outsiders, it might sound like a fairy tale, some mischievous imp told to scare children. But to the people of Detroit, the Nain Rouge is no joke. Its presence is said to be an omen of tragedy, and those who have claimed to see it speak of an unease so deep it clings to them long after the encounter is over. The story goes back to the very founding of Detroit. In the early 1700s, the French explorer Antoine de la Motte Cadillac is said to have had a prophetic vision, a warning that he should avoid angering the Red Dwarf of the Straits. But Cadillac ignored the tale, laughed at it even, and when he eventually mocked the Nain Rouge during an encounter, his fortunes collapsed. Stripped of his wealth and power, Cadillac died in obscurity, and many believed it was the curse of the Nain Rouge that ruined him. From then on, Detroit carried the shadow of this strange, small creature, a shadow that would only grow darker with time. The Nain Rouge is not described like other monsters. Witnesses say it is child-sized, no taller than 3 or 4 feet, but hideous beyond words. Its face is twisted, its eyes glow red like burning embers, and it grins with sharp teeth that look far too large for its mouth. Its skin is said to be dark and leathery, sometimes covered with coarse black hair, and it moves with a speed and confidence that feels unnatural. But the most terrifying detail isn't its appearance, it's the timing. Because the Nain Rouge always shows itself before disaster, as if to announce that misery is coming. In 1763, during Pontiac's Rebellion, settlers reported seeing a small, red-eyed figure darting between cabins in the night just days before the attack on Fort Detroit. Survivors later swore that the Nain Rouge had been there, smiling, as if reveling in the chaos that would soon follow. Centuries later, in 1805, the Great Fire that destroyed nearly the entire city of Detroit was also preceded by reports of a dwarf-like figure creeping through the streets. The fire leveled everything, and people whispered that the Nain Rouge had been spotted laughing as the flames devoured homes. But it's not just ancient history. Sightings of the Red Dwarf continued well into the 20th century. In 1967, just before the infamous Detroit riots that left the city scarred, several residents claimed to have seen a strange, childlike figure with glowing red eyes prowling the rooftops and alleyways. One man even described being followed as he walked home, the sound of soft footsteps behind him, only to turn and glimpse a squat figure darting into the shadows. Days later, the city erupted in violence, and people who had seen the figure shuddered, realizing they had encountered the Nain Rouge. Perhaps the most chilling modern sighting occurred in 1976. Two utility workers repairing lines on Michigan Avenue reported hearing laughter echoing in the night. When they turned, they saw a small figure with glowing red eyes perched on a nearby transformer. They froze, stunned by its grotesque grin, before it vanished in a blur. That same night, a massive ice storm swept through Michigan, leaving destruction in its wake. The workers never forgot what they saw, and to this day, their story is told as proof that the Nain Rouge is alive and well in Detroit. Skeptics call it superstition, pointing out that disaster strikes all cities eventually. But the consistency of the reports, the glowing red eyes, the twisted grin, the timing just before tragedy, makes it difficult to dismiss entirely. Some believe the Nain Rouge isn't just an omen, but a malevolent spirit that feeds on chaos, appearing where suffering is about to bloom. Others think it might be something older, tied to the land itself, a guardian turned vengeful by the mistreatment of Detroit's founders. If you talk to locals, you'll hear plenty of eerie first-hand accounts. One woman, driving home late at night in the 1990s, claimed she saw what looked like a small child standing in the middle of the road. She slowed, worried it might be hurt, but as her headlights illuminated it, she realized it was no child at all. Its skin looked stretched tight over its skull, its mouth twisted into a grin far too wide, and its eyes burned with a fiery glow. Before she could react, the creature sprinted toward her car on all fours, pounding its fists against the hood before vanishing into the night. The next day, Detroit was rocked by a massive power outage that left thousands in darkness. She never doubted that the Nain Rouge had made its presence known. Another man recalled a cold winter morning when he was walking near the riverfront. He felt uneasy, as if someone was watching him, and when he glanced to his side, he saw a hunched figure keeping pace with him just beyond the fence. It was small, cloaked in shadows, but its eyes glowed red even in the daylight. The man hurried away, heart pounding, and weeks later, a tragic accident at the nearby plant claimed several lives. He has never walked that route again. The most frightening thing about the Nain Rouge isn't necessarily the creature itself. It's the sense of doom it carries. People say that when you see it, you're left with a heavy weight in your chest, as if the world itself is about to crack. Sometimes the disaster that follows is large and public, like a riot or a fire. Other times, it's personal. There are stories of individuals who saw the Nain Rouge just before car crashes, illnesses, or devastating losses. It doesn't always bring catastrophe to the city. It sometimes brings it to you. Detroit has tried to fight back against the legend in its own way. Every year, there's a festival called the March du Nain Rouge, where people dress up in costumes and parade through the city, mocking and banishing the Red Dwarf. It's meant to be lighthearted, a way of taking power back from the creature that has haunted the city for centuries. But if you ask the old-timers, they'll tell you the Nain Rouge doesn't care about costumes or laughter. It waits in the alleys, in the shadows, biding its time until the next disaster. And when it comes, the Nain Rouge will be there, grinning as the city suffers again. So, the next time you find yourself walking the streets of Detroit late at night, pay attention to the shadows that move where they shouldn't, to the feeling of being watched, to the echo of laughter that doesn't belong. Because if you ever catch sight of a small, twisted figure with glowing red eyes, don't dismiss it as your imagination. It may already be too late. The Nain Rouge has walked Detroit streets for over 300 years, and according to those who've seen it, it has no intention of leaving. After all, misfortune never runs out, and as long as tragedy exists, so will the grinning red dwarf that heralds it. Now let me take you to a small town on the edge of Lake Huron, a quiet community that has never shaken off the weight of a tragedy more than a century old. The place is Forester, Michigan, and though time has changed the town, the lakefront carries the same sorrowful air that it always has. The locals know the story, and some still whisper it on stormy nights. The tale of Minnie Quay, the young girl who lost everything to the water and whose restless spirit is said to still call out from the waves. To understand the legend, you have to step back to 1876, when Forester was a booming lumber town with ships docking daily along its harbor. Minnie Quay was just 15 years old, a girl known for her beauty and her long, dark hair that shimmered in the sunlight. She was lively, often laughing as she walked the streets. But beneath her joy, she carried a secret that would soon cost her everything. Minnie had fallen in love with a sailor, a young man who worked aboard one of the lake schooners that visited Forester. To her, he was freedom, adventure, a way out of the strict, suffocating rules of her small town. But her parents disapproved, especially her mother, who forbade Minnie from ever seeing him again. They called him untrustworthy, dangerous, someone who would ruin her reputation and abandon her. Minnie was heartbroken, but in those days, a daughter's wishes counted for little. She obeyed, at least outwardly, though her friends said they saw her staring longingly toward the lake, waiting for the ship that carried him. Then, one spring day, news came that the schooner had gone down in Lake Huron. Every man aboard had drowned, including Minnie's sailor. That night, neighbors recalled seeing Minnie pacing the streets, her face pale and her eyes swollen with tears. She walked toward the lake as if in a trance, ignoring those who called after her. Finally, she reached the dock, climbed to the end, and with a cry that echoed through the night, she threw herself into the cold, black water. By the time anyone reached her, it was too late. The waves swallowed her, and her body was found days later. Her death shocked the town, but sorrow quickly turned to shame. Suicide was a sin in those days, and whispers spread that Minnie's spirit would never find peace. From then on, strange things began to happen along the lakefront. Fishermen told of hearing a girl's voice calling their names from the waves, soft and melodic, luring them closer until the sound of the water grew deafening. Young women walking near the shore claimed they saw a pale figure standing at the end of the dock, her long hair streaming as if caught in a current, her dress soaked though no water touched her. They said she would beckon them with a sad smile, as if inviting them to join her beneath the lake. Some claimed she only appeared to girls close to her own age, as if seeking companionship in her lonely death. One of the earliest reports came in 1883, when a group of teenagers dared each other to walk to the dock after dark. The wind was sharp, the lake restless, but curiosity won. They made it halfway before one of the girls froze, staring at the far end. There, just barely visible in the moonlight, stood a figure. She was barefoot, her dress clinging wet to her body, her hair long and dripping. She lifted one arm and gestured to them, silently beckoning. The girl screamed, and the group fled, not stopping until they were back in town. They swore they had seen Minnie, still waiting for the sailor she lost. Stories multiplied over the decades. Sailors passing through reported glimpsing a young woman in white standing ankle-deep in the surf, only to vanish when they tried to approach. Locals spoke of hearing sobbing carried on the wind, so soft it almost blended with the waves. A family living near the shore once claimed their young daughter walked into the lake in the middle of the night, whispering that a girl had called to her from the water. They pulled her back just in time. She never explained more, only repeated, "She wanted me to come." What makes the tale more chilling is that it hasn't faded with time. Even in modern years, tourists visiting Forester Park tell of unsettling experiences. In 1976, a couple camping by the water awoke to hear footsteps outside their tent. The woman peeked out and saw what looked like a young girl walking toward the dock. At first, she thought it was another camper, but when the girl reached the edge, she didn't stop. She simply vanished, as if she had stepped directly into the lake without a splash. The couple reported the sighting, and the locals only nodded knowingly. "That was Minnie," they said. In 1992, a group of fishermen swore they heard a girl's laughter echoing across the water before their boat engine died suddenly, leaving them adrift. One of the men leaned over the side to check the motor and froze. Just beneath the surface of the lake, pale eyes stared back at him. He recoiled in horror, but when he looked again, there was nothing there, just endless dark water. They eventually managed to restart the engine, but not one of them has fished that area again. Why does Minnie Quay's ghost linger? Some say it is grief, a love cut short too soon. Others believe it is anger at the strict parents who denied her happiness, or shame from the town that branded her a sinner. Whatever the cause, her spirit seems tied to the lake, repeating her final walk again and again, searching for someone to join her in the depths. Young girls in particular are warned not to walk alone by the water at night, lest many mistake them for a companion. There are darker stories, too, accounts of those who vanished without explanation, their last known steps leading toward the shore. Though no one can prove Minnie was responsible, the whispers are enough to keep many locals away from the lake after sundown. Parents tell their daughters the story as both a warning and a cautionary tale, but it doesn't stop the curious from testing their courage. They go to the dock at night, hoping to glimpse the pale figure in the moonlight. Some claim they have seen her. Others swear the air feels heavy and sorrowful, pressing down on them until they flee. If you ever visit Forster, the townsfolk will tell you the same thing. Minnie Quay still walks. On quiet nights, you can hear her weeping in the distance, the sound carried by the wind. Sometimes she stands at the dock, her dress clinging, her hair dripping though no rain has fallen. Sometimes she is only a ripple in the water, a pale shape just beneath the waves. But always she waits. So if you find yourself by Lake Huron after dark and the water begins to whisper your name, remember the story of Minnie Quay. Don't follow the sound. Don't step onto the dock. And above all, don't look too long into the water, because you might find a pair of pale hands reaching for you, desperate to pull you into the same eternal sorrow. The ghost of Minnie Quay is not just a piece of folklore. It is a reminder of grief that never heals, of love lost to tragedy, and of a spirit that refuses to rest. And in Forster, Michigan, that spirit still waits for the unwary to join her beneath the black waves of Lake Huron. Tonight, we're traveling to a quiet town in Michigan, a place wrapped in rolling fields and dense woods, where the air is cool and shadows stretch long after the sun dips below the horizon. This is Ada, Michigan, a place that looks calm and peaceful by day, but hides one of the most chilling and enduring legends in the state. They call it the story of the Ada Witch, a restless spirit who roams the woods near Finley Cemetery, doomed by a bloody betrayal more than a century old. And those who have crossed her path swear her presence is as real as the trees themselves. The legend begins in the mid-1800s, when Ada was little more than farmland, churches, and dirt roads. Back then, life was quiet but strict, with families living close to the land and religion dominating much of daily life. But one woman, known only as the Ada Witch, carried a secret that would seal her fate forever. She was married, but unhappy, and her heart belonged to another man. Night after night, under the cover of darkness, she would slip away from her home and meet her lover deep in the woods. For a time, their affair remained hidden, nothing but whispers carried on the wind. But in a town as small as Ada, secrets never stay buried. Her husband eventually discovered the truth, and the night he chose to act, the woods fell into silence, so complete it seemed even the birds and crickets held their breath. Armed with fury and betrayal, he followed his wife into the forest, stalking her as she made her way to her lover. What happened next was pure carnage. The husband confronted them, and in the rage that followed, blood stained the ground. Some say he killed his wife first, striking her down in grief and rage. Others claim he and the lover battled violently, their fight echoing through the trees until both men lay dead, their bodies broken and lifeless. No matter which version is true, one thing is certain. The woman died that night, and with her, a curse was born. Not long after her burial, whispers began of strange occurrences in the woods surrounding Finley Cemetery. Travelers walking the trails after dark reported hearing sobbing in the distance, a woman's cry carried faintly on the wind. Hunters swore they saw a pale figure drifting among the trees, her form flickering in and out of sight, as though she were made of mist. At times, she seemed to wander aimlessly, searching, her voice broken with sorrow. Other times, she appeared enraged, lashing out violently at those who dared cross her path. The earliest detailed account came from a farmer in the 1870s who was making his way home late at night. His horse grew restless as they neared the cemetery, stomping and snorting as if something unseen lingered nearby. Then he saw her, a woman in old-fashioned clothing, standing just off the road. Her dress was torn, her hair wild, and her face pale as chalk. She raised one hand as if to reach for him, and before he could react, she let out a scream that froze his blood. His horse bolted, nearly throwing him from the saddle, and he swore to his dying day that he had looked into the eyes of the Ada witch. As the decades passed, encounters multiplied. Campers near Finley Cemetery claimed they woke in the night to hear footsteps circling their tents, though no one was there when they checked. Drivers passing through Ada late at night reported a woman appearing suddenly in the road, forcing them to swerve, only for her to vanish on impact. Hikers felt icy hands brush their shoulders or heard whispers calling their names from the dark. And always, the air carried the same sense of sorrow and anger, as if the forest itself remembered the crime that birthed her. In 1920, two boys sneaking through the woods after curfew saw what they thought was a lantern swaying in the distance. Thinking it might be someone searching for them, they hid, but as the light drew closer, they realized it wasn't a lantern at all. It was a glowing figure, a woman floating slightly above the ground, her face obscured by shadows, but her body faintly illuminated, like pale fire. She moved slowly, almost drifting, her arms outstretched as if she were searching for something. The boys ran all the way home, shaking too hard to speak, and when they finally told their parents, the story spread through town like wildfire. Even in modern times, sightings continue. Paranormal investigators visiting Finley Cemetery often report equipment malfunctioning, batteries drained, cameras failing, voices captured on recorders when no one was speaking. In 1990, a group of friends dared each other to spend the night near the cemetery. Around midnight, they claimed the temperature dropped suddenly, their breath fogging the air. One of them shone a flashlight into the trees and froze. Standing between the trunks was a woman in a torn white gown, her face pale and streaked with what looked like blood. She stared at them silently, and then, in the blink of an eye, she was gone. Terrified, they fled, and not one of them ever returned. But the Ada, which isn't just a passive haunting. Many stories tell of her growing violent when approached. In 1976, a motorist reported pulling over near Finley Cemetery after car trouble. As he inspected the hood, he felt the overwhelming sensation of being watched. When he turned, a woman in period clothing was standing a few feet away. He tried to speak, but she lunged at him, her hands like claws. He scrambled back into his car, locked the doors, and prayed the engine would start. When it finally did, he sped off, never daring to look in the rearview mirror. Some believe the Ada, which appears most often to those who betray others, as though she can sense infidelity or dishonesty, replaying the betrayal that cost her life. Others say she simply wanders endlessly, stuck between sorrow and rage, unable to move on. Skeptics dismiss the tales as folklore, nothing more than stories told to scare children and entertain tourists. But those who've had encounters aren't so quick to laugh. They describe her presence with the kind of fear you can't fake, the hair-raising certainty that something unnatural brushed against their world. Even the land itself seems marked. The woods around Finley Cemetery are said to carry an unnatural silence at night. I'll stop hooting. The wind dies. The air becomes heavy, thick, as if pressing against your chest. And in that silence, you might hear it, the faint sound of sobbing, a woman's weeping carried through the trees. If you follow it, you may see her, pale and flickering, doomed to relive her final night again and again. So if you ever find yourself in Ada, Michigan, and the road takes you near Finley Cemetery, think twice before stepping into the woods after dark. If you hear footsteps behind you, don't turn around. If you hear a woman sobbing, don't follow it. And if you see a pale figure reaching out her hand, pray she doesn't notice you. Because once the Ada witch fixes her eyes on you, some say she never lets go. The Ada witch's story is a reminder of how tragedy lingers, how betrayal and blood can echo across centuries. Her restless spirit remains a fixture of Ada, her presence felt by locals and visitors alike. And maybe that's the scariest part, because when the night grows silent and the air chills around you, there's no way to know if it's just the wind or if she's right there, watching, waiting, reaching for another soul to drag into her eternal misery. When night falls over the deep forests of Michigan, silence settles in a way that feels unnatural. The wind dies, the trees stand still, and the darkness feels heavier, thicker than it should. It's in that silence where hunters, campers, and wanderers swear they've heard it. A howl unlike any wolf or coyote, a sound that vibrates in your bones and twists in your gut. Half animal, half human. This is the legend of the Michigan Dogman, a creature that stalks the woods, standing on two legs, towering, its eyes glowing amber in the dark. And for more than a century, the stories have been the same. Encounters with something that should not exist. The first recorded sighting came in 1887. Two lumberjacks working in Wexford County claimed they were chopping near the river when they heard heavy footsteps behind them. Thinking it was a bear, they turned, only to see a creature unlike anything they'd ever known. It stood on two legs, nearly 7 feet tall, its body covered in dark fur. But what froze them in place was its head, unmistakably canine, a wolf's snout lined with glistening teeth, ears twitching as it snarled. The men ran, abandoning their tools, swearing that whatever they saw wasn't human and wasn't animal. It was something caught in between. Their story spread through the logging camps like wildfire, and before long, others began to whisper that there was something in the Michigan woods that didn't belong. Over the years, the legend didn't fade. Hunters reported being stalked in the woods, hearing twigs snap just behind them, footsteps too heavy to be deer, too deliberate to be coincidence. Campers described eyes glowing at the edge of firelight, low growls echoing in the night, and silhouettes moving on two legs through the trees. Farmers woke to find their livestock slaughtered, claw marks gouged deep into barn doors, prints in the mud shaped like oversized wolf paws. And always, the same detail surfaced. Whatever it wasn't just an animal. It was watching. It was waiting. It was choosing. One of the most unsettling encounters came in the summer of 1938. A farmer named James Taylor was checking traps near the Misty River when he noticed the woods had gone silent. The frogs, the crickets, even the birds gone. Then, from the corner of his eye, he saw movement. At first, he thought it was another man, tall and broad-shouldered, stepping between the trees. But when it turned, James's breath caught in his throat. Its face was elongated, its muzzle dripping, its eyes reflecting the moon with a glow that felt unnatural. It bared its teeth, but made no move to attack. Instead, it just stared. James stumbled back, his chest tight, and ran. Later, when he told his neighbors, he admitted what chilled him most wasn't how it looked. It was the intelligence in its eyes, as if it had chosen to let him go. By the 1960s, sightings had become impossible to ignore. Near Big Rapids, a group of campers claimed they were sitting around a fire when they heard heavy breathing just beyond the circle of light. One man grabbed a flashlight and pointed it toward the sound. That's when they saw it, towering, its chest rising and falling with ragged breaths, its fur matted, its face unmistakably canine. The light hit its eyes, and they glowed with a reflection too bright, too unnatural. Before they could react, the creature bolted into the woods, crashing through the brush with inhuman speed. The campers packed up before dawn, leaving their fire to die in the dirt, vowing never to set foot in those woods again. The Dogman's legend grew even more infamous in 1987, when a DJ named Steve Cook recorded a novelty song called The Legend. He thought it was nothing more than a spooky tale to entertain listeners on April Fool's Day, a made-up story about a half-dog, half-man roaming the woods. But the response he received was nothing like he expected. Calls poured into the station, not from people laughing, but from people claiming they'd seen the creature themselves. Farmers, hunters, loggers, even police officers, all swearing that the Dogman wasn't just a campfire story. It was real, and it had been haunting them long before the song. One caller told of being a teenager in the 1960s, driving down a dirt road late at night. Something moved in the ditch, then sprinted alongside the car. At first, he thought it was a man, but the speed was impossible. The creature kept pace with the vehicle, running upright, its eyes glowing, its mouth curled into a snarl. It followed him until the car hit the highway lights, then vanished back into the dark. Another caller, a hunter, described watching what he thought was a bear until it stood upright, towering over the brush, watching him with chilling intelligence. He raised his rifle, but froze when it growled. Not the growl of an animal, but something deeper, something that sounded disturbingly human. Skeptics have tried to explain the legend away. Some claim it's nothing more than misidentified bears, wolves, or coyotes seen under poor lighting. Others believe it's a case of folklore reinforced by fear, with each new sighting influenced by the last. But there are details skeptics can't explain. Bears don't sprint on two legs for miles. Wolves don't watch from the tree-line, upright, silent, as if calculating. And every witness describes the same eyes, the same unnatural glow, even when no light source should have been there to reflect. In 1997, a farmer near Traverse City captured an audio recording of a howl late at night. He had gone out to check on his animals when he heard the sound, long, guttural, starting low and rising into a pitch so sharp it made his blood run cold. He recorded it, and when experts analyzed the sound, none could identify the species. To this day, the Gable howl, as it's come to be known, circulates online, a bone-chilling reminder that something strange stalks Michigan's wilderness. But the Dogman isn't always distant. Some people claim to have been directly attacked, or at least marked. In 1993, a man driving near Reed City swore that something leapt onto the back of his truck. He described claws screeching across the metal, denting the roof as he sped down the road in terror. When he finally pulled into town, the roof bore deep gashes, too wide to be from any known animal. Another man, hunting alone in 2001, claimed he was chased for nearly a mile by a creature running upright, crashing through the trees just feet behind him. He never saw it clearly, but he could feel its presence, hear its snarls, smell its musky, wet fur stench as it drove him back toward the safety of his truck. Perhaps the most disturbing part of the Dogman legend isn't the sightings themselves. It's what happens afterward. Survivors describe dreams, recurring nightmares of glowing eyes in the woods, of claws scraping at windows, of heavy breathing outside their doors. Some even claim to hear howls near their homes weeks after their encounters, as though the Dogman followed them back, marking them as prey. Even today, the Dogman legend is alive. Hikers vanish in the woods. Hunters find carcasses torn apart in ways no known predator could manage. Drivers on rural roads report figures crossing the highway on two legs, disappearing into the trees. The deeper you dig, the more the stories align. Something is out there, and whether you believe it or not doesn't matter, because those who've seen it up close often wish they hadn't. So if you ever find yourself walking alone in the Michigan woods, listen closely. In the remote forests of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, there's a narrow road just outside the small town of Paulding. At first glance, it looks ordinary, just a stretch of pavement cutting through miles of wilderness, bordered by thick trees that block out the stars. But ask anyone in town what happens there after sunset, and they'll lower their voice, their eyes shifting toward the dark. Because on certain nights, when the air is still and the woods are silent, a strange glow appears in the distance, a floating, pulsating light that moves along the road and through the trees. The locals call it the Paulding Light, and for more than half a century, no one has been able to explain what it is. The first official report came in 1966, when a group of teenagers driving through Paulding late at night saw the light hovering over the road. They described it as bright and steady at first, almost like a lantern, but as it drew closer, it changed shape, pulsing, flickering, even splitting into two before vanishing entirely. The kids returned the next night, and the night after that, and each time the light reappeared. Word spread quickly, and soon townsfolk, police officers, and even local news reporters were coming to the site, watching the mysterious glow appear and vanish as if on command. Some people say it's the ghost of a railroad brakeman who died tragically in the area decades earlier, crushed while trying to stop a runaway train. According to the legend, the light is his lantern, swinging eternally as he searches for the train that killed him. Others whisper that it's the spirit of a murdered mail carrier, ambushed along the road, his ghost wandering the woods with his lantern forever in hand. A few even believe it's something darker, not a human spirit at all, but a will-o'-the-wisp or demonic presence, luring travelers into the forest where they vanish without a trace. One of the earliest encounters that gave the Paulding Light its chilling reputation happened in the late 1960s, when a state trooper parked his cruiser along the road to investigate. He and his partner sat in silence, their headlights off, the forest pressing in on all sides. Hours passed with nothing but the occasional rustle of wind through the branches. Then, just after midnight, the light appeared. It was faint at first, a distant glow that looked like headlights cresting a hill far away. But the road was empty and there was no hill. The glow grew brighter, larger, until it hovered silently over the road ahead. The officers described it as a bluish-white ball of light, pulsing like a heartbeat. Just as quickly as it had appeared, it shot upward into the sky and vanished. The troopers, hardened men who had seen their share of strange things, admitted later that they had no explanation and refused to return to that stretch of road after dark. Over the decades, the Paulding Light became a local legend, drawing curious onlookers from across Michigan and beyond. People would line their cars along the road, waiting in silence for the glow to appear. Some nights, it stayed away entirely, as though mocking them. Other nights, it appeared repeatedly, floating, flickering, darting into the trees before re-emerging. A group of college students once camped near the site, determined to solve the mystery. They set up cameras and recorders, watching the darkness intently. Around 2 a.m., one of them spotted it, a ball of light drifting silently along the tree line. They scrambled for their cameras, but when the light passed directly in front of them, their equipment died. Batteries drained, film jammed, recorders fell silent. The students fled before dawn, shaken by the idea that whatever they had witnessed didn't want to be captured. Not everyone believes the Paulding Light is supernatural. In the 2010s, a group of engineering students from Michigan Tech conducted a study, claiming the phenomenon could be explained by distant headlights refracting through the valley's unique geography. But their explanation didn't silence the believers. Locals pointed out that the light had been reported long before the road in question was even built. And besides, headlights don't split into multiple orbs, change colors, or dart into the woods like living things. Whatever the students recorded may have explained some nights, but it couldn't explain them all. One particularly terrifying account came from a man named Bill who visited the site with his girlfriend in the 1980s. They parked along the road, waiting in silence when a light appeared. It grew brighter, larger, until it was almost blinding. Then, to their horror, it began moving toward them. Bill described the sensation of being rooted in place, his chest tightening as the glow filled the car, bathing them in icy light. His girlfriend screamed, covering her face, and just like that, the light was gone. They drove back to town in silence, both shaken, and neither spoke of the encounter for years. When Bill finally shared his story, he admitted what disturbed him most wasn't the light itself. It was the sense of intelligence behind it, as if it had chosen them, as if it had wanted to be seen. Some visitors claim the Paulding Light is accompanied by sound, strange, faint noises carried on the wind. People describe hearing the distant wail of a train whistle, though no tracks run nearby. Others swear they've heard footsteps crunching in the leaves just behind them, only to turn and find nothing there. A few even claim to have heard voices, low, urgent whispers calling their names from the treeline. Those who stay too long often leave with splitting headaches, nausea, or the feeling of being followed long after they've gone. The land itself seems tainted. Animals avoid the area, and those that wander too close are said to act strangely. Dogs whine and bark at the empty road, hackles raised, refusing to go near the treeline. Birds fall silent when the light appears, as though even nature recognizes something unnatural has entered the world. One of the most unsettling tales come from a young couple who pulled over on the road late one night in the 1990s. They claimed the light appeared faint at first, then grew brighter, closer, until it hovered just above their car. Panicked, they tried to start the engine, but it wouldn't turn over. The glow surrounded them, filling the car with blinding white. And then, just as suddenly, it was gone. When the car finally started, they sped away, but for weeks afterward, they reported strange activity at home. Lights flickered, doors creaked open, and on several nights, they swore they saw the same faint glow outside their bedroom window, hovering in the dark. Whether it's a ghost, an energy phenomenon, or something darker, the Paulding light continues to baffle and terrify. Thousands have seen it. Many have tried to explain it, but no one has managed to capture its true nature. And maybe that's the most frightening part, because whatever it is, it doesn't behave like simple headlights or natural swamp gas. It seems aware, deliberate, appearing when it wants to, vanishing when it chooses. If you ever find yourself driving through Paulding after dark and you decide to stop along that lonely stretch of road, you'll feel it. The silence pressing in, the weight of the forest on both sides. And when the light appears, whether faint and distant or bright and hovering, remember this. Don't follow it. Don't chase it into the trees, because many believe that's exactly what it wants. And those who have gone chasing after the Paulding light have a habit of not coming back. There are parts of Michigan that seem quiet, almost dreamlike in the way the land rolls into forests and farmland, the air heavy with dew in the early mornings, the rivers silver in the moonlight. But deep inside this calm, tucked away in Kent County, lies the small community of Ada. And Ada holds one of the most haunting tales in all of Michigan folklore. The story of a woman who loved, betrayed, and was murdered, and who never found rest. They call her the Ada Witch. The story begins sometime in the mid-1800s, when Ada was still a sparse settlement of farmers, trappers, and families trying to carve out a life on the edge of wilderness. Life was hard, but people talked, and gossip traveled fast in towns that small. It was during this time that a woman, no one remembers her exact name anymore, was said to be married to a local man, quiet but hard-working, the type who lived for his crops and his home. But his wife's heart wandered. No one knows why. Some say her husband ignored her. Some whisper she was simply restless. Whatever the reason, she began an affair with another man. Their meetings were secret, usually under cover of night. They would meet in the dense woods outside town, their lanterns casting flickering glows against the trees, their whispers carried by the wind. The locals started noticing, but it wasn't until her husband discovered the truth that the legend began to take its darkest turn. One night, perhaps guided by suspicion or following his wife's tracks, the husband stumbled upon the secret meeting in the woods. He confronted them. The air was thick with rage, jealousy, and betrayal. Shouts echoed through the trees. A fight broke out. The husband, blinded by fury, attacked the man first, and in the struggle, all three became entangled in violence. By the time it was over, the lover was dead. The husband, mortally wounded, collapsed onto the cold ground. And the woman, his wife, did not survive either. Some versions say the husband strangled her in his rage. Others claim she was struck down in the fight. However it happened, by the end of that night, 3 lives had been ended in blood and screams. The woods were silent once more, but the silence did not last long. The bodies were buried. The town moved on, but the spirit of the woman never found peace. For over a century, people have reported her presence, wandering the forests of Ada after midnight. Her figure is often described as pale, draped in a faint blue glow, a woman in tattered clothes, her hair hanging long and loose. Locals call her the Ada Witch, though she was never truly a witch in life, just a woman who sinned, betrayed, and died violently. But in folklore, sin and death often transform the lost into something darker. Those who claim to have seen her say she wanders the Finley Cemetery, drifting among the headstones like mist. Some nights, she appears along Bailey Drive, a lonely stretch of road cutting through Ada's woods, where drivers have slammed on their brakes when a glowing figure appeared in the middle of the road, only to vanish when the car came to a stop. There is one chilling detail repeated over and over in eyewitness accounts. People who encounter the Ada, which often describe the overwhelming sense that she's not just lost, but suffering. Her form flickers, her face is contorted, and sometimes, if you listen closely, you can hear faint crying echoing through the woods, or the sound of a woman screaming in sudden, violent terror. One story tells of a man walking through the Finley Cemetery late at night in the 1980s. He swore he saw a faint blue light weaving between the stones. At first, he thought it was another visitor with a lantern. But as he approached, the figure solidified, a woman in ragged clothing, her face twisted in pain. She raised her hand toward him, and he felt the temperature around him plummet. His breath fogged, his skin prickled, and then she was gone. The man left the cemetery and never returned. Another tale comes from a group of teenagers in the 1990s who drove out to Bailey Drive to test their courage. They parked, shut off the headlights, and waited in the still night. For nearly half an hour, nothing happened. Then, from the tree line, they saw her, a faint glow, moving slowly toward the road. They describe her movements as unsteady, as if she were stumbling, injured. The boys froze, too scared to start the car. When the figure finally stepped onto the road, the driver panicked and flicked on headlights. In that instant, the glowing woman vanished. The boys sped away, their hearts pounding. But the Ada, which doesn't only appear visually. Many people say she makes herself known in other ways. Hikers have reported hearing footsteps following them in the woods when no one is there. Some say they've been pushed, scratched, or felt sudden bursts of icy wind against their necks. Others have claimed to wake up with scratches on their arms after visiting the area at night. There's even a darker version of the legend that says she replays her death over and over again. That in the woods of Ada, if you're unlucky enough, you may hear the sounds of her last moments, the shouting of men, the grunts of struggle, and the final blood-curdling scream of the woman who became the Ada Witch. And it isn't just thrill-seekers and teenagers who have reported her. Police officers have been called to Finley Cemetery multiple times after locals spotted strange lights or heard screaming in the woods. Each time, officers search the grounds, but they never find anyone. Skeptics say it's just local folklore, that the story of a cheating wife and a jealous husband is too convenient, too much like an old morality tale. But if that's true, then why do the sightings continue? Why do people, year after year, describe the same glowing woman, the same piercing screams, the same feeling of being watched in the woods of Ada? Maybe it doesn't matter whether the Ada, which was real in life. What matters is that something haunts Ada still, something born from betrayal, violence, and restless grief. And if you ever find yourself near Ada, Michigan, driving down Bailey Drive late at night, or wandering too close to Finley Cemetery after midnight, you might catch a glimpse of her too. But if you do, don't follow the light. Don't listen to the cries. Because the Ada, which has been wandering for over 100 years, and she may just be searching for someone new to share her eternal suffering. That's the story of the Ada Witch, Michigan's restless ghost of betrayal and murder. If you enjoyed this tale and want more, make sure to subscribe to Wrong Turn Horror and hit the bell so you never miss a new chilling story. Michigan has its fair share of haunted woods and ghost towns, but very few names carry as much menace as Hell's Bridge. Just the sound of it, Hell's Bridge, conjures up an image of damnation, of something forbidden, of a place no one should cross after dark. And yet, locals will tell you it's real. A small, creaking footbridge that spans a branch of the Rogue River, hidden among the thick trees of Kent County. If you go there today, it looks almost harmless. A narrow little bridge, worn from time, surrounded by silence. The water below gurgles quietly, the trees sway in the wind. But the history tied to that bridge is anything but harmless. It is one of Michigan's most disturbing ghost stories, a tale of murder, betrayal, and the devil himself. The legend dates back to the mid-1800s, when a man named Elias Frisk lived near Algoma Township. He wasn't well liked. He was a strange man, often described in old whispers as cruel, harsh, and deeply unsettling. Some said he was a preacher gone mad. Others claimed he was simply evil to his core. Whatever he was, one cold autumn night, he gathered the children of the town. He told their parents there had been an attack, that something dangerous lurked in the woods, and that he would lead the children to safety until the danger passed. The parents, frightened and desperate, trusted him. They let Elias lead their children away. But he did not take them to safety. He led them deep into the woods, to the Rogue River, to the very place where Hell's Bridge now stands. There, under the cover of night, Elias tied the children together with rope and marched them onto the small wooden bridge. And one by one, he slaughtered them. Their screams carried through the trees as the icy water below swallowed their bodies. When it was over, the bridge was soaked in blood, the rope was heavy with death, and the children were gone. When the townspeople discovered what he had done, they dragged Elias to that same bridge. Some say he laughed at them. Some say he muttered scripture twisted into something unholy. And when they tied the noose and prepared to end his life, he screamed that the devil had guided his hand, that he had been serving something far darker than himself. The people hanged him there, over the same waters that carried away the children's souls. His body swung lifeless in the cold night, but his spirit never left. That is how the story of Hell's Bridge was born. For over a century, people who have dared to visit the bridge after dark report terrifying encounters. The most common is the sound of children crying, soft at first, then growing louder, echoing through the woods until it feels as though the voices are right behind you. Some claim they hear splashing in the water like small hands thrashing against the current. Others say if you stand on the bridge long enough, you can hear Elias himself, whispering prayers in a low, guttural voice or laughing, the sound carrying just above the rushing of the river. The bridge itself seems cursed. People who visit describe a sudden drop in temperature, their breath fogging even in summer. Cameras malfunction, batteries drain instantly, and audio recorders pick up whispers that no one hears in the moment. A few who dare to taunt the legend claim they've been pushed, scratched, or even choked by unseen hands while standing on the bridge. But the most chilling accounts are those who claim to have seen Elias himself, a dark figure, sometimes described as a man in tattered clothing, other times as a shadow darker than the night itself. He is often spotted at the edge of the trees, just beyond the bridge, watching, waiting, his eyes glowing faintly red in the dark. One story tells of a group of teenagers who went to Hell's Bridge in the 1970s. They brought tape recorders, hoping to capture the voices of the children. At first, all they heard was static. Then, faintly, the sound of crying. When they played the tape back at home, the crying grew louder and louder until it turned into screaming. And then, a voice, low and raspy, whispered their names. Each one of them. The boys never went back. Another tale comes from a hunter who was passing through the area one cold October night. He swore he saw a lantern light flickering near the bridge. Thinking someone else was there, he approached. But as he got closer, the lights vanished. And then he heard it, the sound of rope creaking under weight, the muffled choking of someone hanging, and the faint laughter of a man. When he shined his flashlight, the bridge was empty. What makes Hell's Bridge so terrifying isn't just the story of Elias Frisk. It's the feeling that the evil didn't die with him, that the ground itself is cursed, soaked in blood, echoing with the screams of innocence. The legend says the devil claimed Elias that night, dragging his soul into darkness, but leaving behind something twisted, a fragment that haunts the rogue river still. Skeptics say it's just a story. They point out that there's no written record of Elias Frisk, no historical evidence of a mass killing in Algoma Township. They say the tale is folklore, meant to scare children and keep them out of the woods at night. But then how do you explain the cries? The scratches? The whispers caught on tape? How do you explain the dozens of visitors who come back pale, shaken, swearing they felt hands clutching at them in the dark? Perhaps the most disturbing thought is this. Maybe the legend doesn't need to be historically true to be real. Maybe the land itself remembers suffering, absorbs pain, and twists it into something alive. Maybe the name, Hell's Bridge, isn't just a story. Maybe it's a warning. And if you ever find yourself in Algoma Township, standing before that narrow little bridge as the sun dips below the trees, you might think it looks harmless, just a crossing over quiet water. But wait until midnight, when the woods fall silent and the air turns cold. Step onto the bridge and listen. You might hear the splashing of little hands. You might hear the creak of rope. And if you're truly unlucky, you might hear Elias himself, whispering from the dark. And if you do, run, because some bridges don't lead to the other side. Some bridges lead straight to hell. That's the terrifying story of Hell's Bridge, one of Michigan's most haunted places. If you enjoyed this tale and want more, make sure to subscribe to Wrong Turn Horror and hit the bell so you never miss a new chilling story. If you've ever driven through the wild, isolated forests of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, you know how different it feels from the rest of the state. The air is heavier, the roads stretch endlessly between towering trees, and at night, the silence feels alive. Somewhere near the small town of Paulding, along a lonely stretch of highway near Robbins Pond Road, there's a clearing where people gather. They don't come for the stars, or the sound of the forest, or the quiet. They come for a light, a strange, inexplicable glow that appears in the distance almost every night. A light that has terrified generations. They call it the Paulding Light. The first reported sighting dates back to the 1960s, when a group of teenagers claimed they saw a mysterious glowing orb down in the valley. It appeared out of nowhere, floated, shifted colors, and then vanished without a trace. Soon after, others began to gather on the roadside at night, waiting for the same thing. And sure enough, the light returned again and again, always in the same spot, always hovering in the same eerie way. The light has been described in dozens of ways. Sometimes it's a small white orb, like a lantern flickering in the distance. Sometimes it swells, glowing red or green, pulsing like a heartbeat. Some say it splits into two, dances, then disappears. Others swear it rushes forward as if barreling down the road before vanishing inches from where they stand. No matter how many people witness it, the Paulding Light refuses to be consistent, and it refuses to be explained. Over the years, legends began to form around it. One of the most popular is that of a railroad brakeman who in the early 1900s worked the lines that once ran through the valley. One night, while carrying his lantern, he slipped and fell onto the tracks. The train struck him, killing him instantly. They say the Paulding Light is his lantern, still swinging through the night as he searches for his lost train, his lost duty, or perhaps the body he left behind. Another version of the story claims it's the ghost of a murdered man, wandering the valley for eternity, his spirit caught between worlds. Some whisper that the light is demonic, a lure meant to pull the curious off the safe road and into the dark woods, where they'll never return. The native Ojibwe people of the region have their own interpretation, that the light is the spirit of a restless soul, a messenger from another realm, forever trapped between the living and the dead. And people keep seeing it, night after night. One chilling account comes from a couple in the 1970s who parked along Robbins Pond Road to see the light. At first, they noticed a faint glow deep in the trees. It grew brighter, shifting from white to a deep crimson. Then, suddenly it surged toward them. The man panicked, started the car, but before he could drive off, the light stopped just a few feet from the hood. For a moment, it hovered there, pulsing like a living thing. The woman swore she could hear a low humming sound, like distant machinery or whispers. Then in an instant it vanished. They drove away, too shaken to ever return. Another story tells of a group of college students in the 1990s who camped near the site to get a better look. They sat in silence, watching as the familiar glow appeared down the valley. One of them, braver than the rest, decided to walk toward it. His friends watched as he made his way down the road, the light glowing steadily ahead of him. But as he got closer, the light began to move backward, further away, almost as if it were taunting him. He chased it deeper and deeper into the woods until his friends could no longer see him. For nearly 2 hours, they waited. When he finally came back, his face was pale, his hands shaking. He refused to tell them what happened. All he said was, "Don't ever follow the light." Even paranormal investigators have tried to capture it. In the 1980s, a group brought cameras and equipment to record. They managed to film the light hovering in the distance, glowing and shifting for several minutes. But when they played back the audio, something strange emerged. A faint voice, whispering, almost drowned by static. The words were unclear, but some who listened swore they heard crying. Of course, skeptics have their explanations. In 2010, students from Michigan Tech University conducted an official investigation. They claimed the light was nothing more than car headlights from a distant highway, distorted by the valley's unique geography. They measured angles, recorded patterns, and concluded the mystery was solved. But the locals didn't buy it. Because here's the problem. People had seen the Paulding light long before the highways were built. And not everyone agrees with the car headlight theory. Witnesses described the light splitting in two, changing colors, darting side to side, things no headlights could possibly do. Some say they've seen the light on nights when no cars were on the road for hours. Others claim they've seen it floating in the trees, well above where headlights could reach. The mystery remains. And perhaps that's what makes the Paulding light so terrifying. It refuses to be neatly explained. It refuses to vanish. Year after year, people gather, cameras ready, hearts pounding, waiting for the glow to return. And more often than not, it does. If you ever find yourself in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, near the lonely stretch of Robbins Pond Road, pull over after sunset. Stand with the others, staring into the valley. You might wait for minutes or hours, but eventually, a faint glow will appear in the distance. It will shimmer, pulse, maybe grow brighter. And as you watch, ask yourself, is it headlights? Is it the lantern of a long-dead brakeman? Or is it something darker, something that doesn't want to be explained? And if the light begins to move toward you, rushing closer and closer until it feels like it's about to swallow you whole, just remember one thing. The Paulding light has been seen for decades, and no one who's followed it has ever come back the same. That's the story of the Paulding light, Michigan's most enduring and chilling mystery. If you enjoyed this tale and want more, make sure to subscribe to Wrong Turn Horror and hit the bell so you never miss a new chilling story. Michigan is a land of lakes, Great Lakes that stretch so wide they feel like oceans, endless water swallowing the horizon. Along their shores, lighthouses stand like sentinels, their beams once guiding sailors through deadly storms and treacherous reefs. Some of them are beautiful, some are forgotten, and some are haunted. On the eastern edge of Michigan's Lower Peninsula, along the rocky shores of Lake Huron, stands the old Presque Isle Lighthouse. Built in 1840, it is one of the state's oldest beacons, a short and weathered stone tower rising 30 feet into the air. It was replaced by a newer, taller lighthouse in 1870, and its lantern was permanently extinguished. But to this day, sailors report seeing its light shining out over the water, a ghostly beacon that should not exist. The legend begins in the late 1800s, after the old lighthouse was retired. Local fishermen started reporting strange sightings. On stormy nights, when the lake churned black and violent, they swore they saw the old light shining again, sweeping across the waves. At first, many thought it was the newer lighthouse nearby, but sailors were quick to point out the difference. The new Presque Isle light was taller, brighter, and cast from a different angle. The glow they saw came unmistakably from the old, abandoned tower. Over the years, more and more sailors came forward with the same story. The light would appear in times of danger, when fog rolled thick across the water or when storms battered their boats. It guided them safely to shore, even though no one had manned the lantern for decades. Locals began to wonder, who was keeping the light burning? That's when the name George Paris became part of the tale. George and his wife moved into the old keeper's cottage in the 1930s, long after the lighthouse was retired. George fell in love with the tower. He spent hours inside it, polishing the lantern, climbing the narrow stone steps, keeping the old light alive in his own way, even though it could never be lit again. Locals said George often spoke of how he wished he could serve as its keeper forever. When George passed away in 1991, something strange began to happen. Almost immediately after his death, sailors and tourists reported seeing the light shine again. Not just faintly, but brightly, cutting through fog, flashing across the dark waters of Lake Huron. Even the Coast Guard received calls about it. Crews were dispatched to investigate, but when they arrived, the lantern room was dark and empty. The lighthouse had no power, no flame, nothing that could explain the glowing beacon. And yet, the light shone. Witnesses described it as golden, steady, and unmistakable. Families visiting the grounds claimed they saw the lantern blazing, only to climb the tower and find the lamp cold. Some swore they saw the figure of a man inside, moving in the lantern room, tending the light, just as George once did. One chilling story tells of a family visiting the lighthouse shortly after George's death. They toured the tower during the day, then returned that night to take photographs from the shoreline. To their shock, the lantern was lit. They snapped pictures, capturing the eerie glow against the dark sky. But when they developed the photos later, one image revealed more than just the light. It showed a faint silhouette of a man standing in the lantern room, his hand resting against the glass. The family was certain it was George. Another account comes from a sailor caught in a storm in the mid-1990s. With waves crashing against his boat and fog blinding his path, he prayed for help. Suddenly, a beam of light pierced the darkness, sweeping across the lake. He followed it, guiding his vessel to safety. When he came ashore and told locals about the mysterious light, they nodded knowingly. That was George, they said. The ghostly light isn't the only strange occurrence. Visitors to the keeper's cottage have reported hearing footsteps on the stairs, the sound of heavy boots pacing the floors. Some say they've heard the faint creak of the lantern room door opening above, even when no one is inside the tower. A few even claim to have seen George himself, his spirit, solid as life, standing near the base of the lighthouse with a calm smile, as though welcoming them to his eternal post. Skeptics, of course, try to explain it away. Some say the glow is just reflections of headlights on distant roads. Others suggest it's a trick of the atmosphere, the way fog and moisture bend light. But those explanations fall apart when you consider the sailors who saw the beacon far out on the water in places where no car headlights could possibly reach, or the visitors who saw the light blazing clearly inside the lantern room when they stood at the base of the tower and looked up. Even the Coast Guard eventually acknowledged the reports, though they offered no official explanation. To this day, no one can fully account for the ghostly glow of the old Presque Isle Lighthouse. Perhaps George Paris really did get his wish to keep the light forever. Perhaps the tower remembers the years it spent saving lives and refuses to stay dark. Or perhaps there's something deeper at work on the shores of Lake Huron, something about lighthouses that makes them magnets for restless spirits. Whatever the truth may be, the old Presque Isle Lighthouse remains one of Michigan's most haunted places. Tourists still visit, hoping to catch a glimpse of the ghostly light. Some leave disappointed, seeing nothing. Others leave shaken, swearing they saw the lantern blaze in the darkness. And the sailors who pass by on foggy nights still glance toward the old tower, searching for that golden glow, just in case it saves them from the waves. So if you ever find yourself on Michigan's northeastern coast, standing before the weathered stone tower of the old Presque Isle Lighthouse, stay a while after sunset. Watch the lantern room carefully. And if you see a light burning where none should be, know this: you are not alone. George Paris may still be there, keeping his eternal watch, guiding lost souls across the endless waters of Lake Huron. And maybe, just maybe, that light isn't meant to save you. Maybe it's meant to draw you in. That's the chilling legend of the old Presque Isle Lighthouse, Michigan's ghostly beacon that refuses to die. If you enjoyed this tale and want more, make sure to subscribe to Wrong Turn Horror and hit the bell so you never miss a new chilling story.